Hi friends, welcome back to my kitchen. I'm Courtney with Cake by Courtney, and today we are making one of my favorite no-bake desserts. It's my no-bake Caramel Apple Cheesecake Bars, and these have the most delicious Biscoff cookie and pecan nut crust. We're gonna make a no-bake cheesecake filling, and then we're gonna caramelize some apples, and we're gonna make a homemade caramel sauce. So to get started, we're gonna start over at the stove and make some homemade caramel. To make the homemade caramel, we're gonna start by putting some water and sugar in a little just saucepan on the stove. And I'm actually gonna add a little bit of corn syrup. This helps so that the sugar doesn't caramelize and we get a really beautiful kind of glossy look. You don't need too much, so just a couple teaspoons is all you need. We're gonna let this sit. After we whisk it together and the sugar is dissolved, you need to back away. That is like take 2 steps back. Do not worry about stirring this while the sugar is cooking. You actually want it to just do everything on its own until it becomes this really beautiful kind of amber caramel color. And you'll start to even smell it and know that it's about ready to be done. But just let it sit. It's gonna boil. It's gonna look really light in color for a while, but be patient because as soon as it starts to change color, it's gonna move fast and you don't want it to burn. We're gonna turn off the heat. And we're gonna very slowly add our heavy whipping cream. And now it's nice to have your heavy whipping cream even heated a little bit, but very slowly we're gonna stir that and whisk that in to our caramel mixture. And once that's all poured in, we're gonna add a little bit of salt and some vanilla. We just got done with the caramel and I'm stirring it just one last little bit. Now it's still hot, so I'm just gonna pour it in my mason jar to cool. I'm not gonna put a lid on it or anything. Now it still looks pretty thin. Do not let that get you worried. Totally okay, just like this. It will thicken as it's sitting out and as it cools. So once it gets completely to room temperature, that's when I can store it in the refrigerator and I'll cover it with the lid. But she looks beautiful. That color is perfect. And we let it get to about 320 degrees Fahrenheit, just right around there. I like mine to get just on like the darker side of that caramel amber color, because then you get that kind of extra, I don't know, toasty, like not burnt, but like almost there, if you know what I mean. And you'll start to smell it. And as you're working on caramel and you're making this more and more, you'll really get to know kind of the exact point that you love, but kind of look for that 320 degrees and then that really deep, beautiful amber color. All right, the caramel is made and ready to go. I like doing this first before I do all the other elements for the bar, so it has a chance to cool down to room temperature. So I'm gonna set this aside, and the next thing we're gonna make is the caramelized apples. The next step in the bars is gonna be peeling our apples, chopping them up, and then caramelizing them over the stove. I like to use Granny Smith apples. I think just the tartness is a really great complement to the sweetness of everything that we're using. So those are my favorite, but you can pick whatever apples you love to use. We're gonna need a little bit of lemon juice and then some brown sugar and cinnamon. So let me get started on this and then I'll take you over to the stove so you can see how I'm cooking them and getting to the point where they're just soft enough that we can let them cool. And when we pour them on our cheesecake bars, they're gonna be so delicious and really just yummy and decadent to bite into. So I'm gonna grab my peeler and get these prepped. Apples are peeled, they're chopped, and just while we're kind of getting the stove ready, I like to have them in just a bowl with a little bit of lemon juice, just to make sure they don't turn too brown. We are gonna caramelize them a little bit, but this does give them a nice, good flavor in there too. So let's just toss them up. We've got to start making kind of the caramel sauce that's going on this, which is different from our salted caramel. We just wanna give this like a little bit of butter, brown sugar, and cinnamon to just help caramelize our apples and give them a really good flavor. So let's head over to the stove. All right, we're gonna get started by melting just a couple tablespoons of unsalted butter. And as that melts down, we can add our brown sugar and our cinnamon. And we're gonna stir this really well so the brown sugar just starts to dissolve and it's gonna kind of look like a thick caramel. Let that just be for just a second as you're stirring it. And then we're gonna add all those apples that we peeled and we chopped. Get that a good coat of that brown sugar mixture. So all the apples are totally coated with that. And then we're just gonna stir occasionally. We want these apples to get to a softer texture. You're gonna let them cook, stirring occasionally for a couple minutes. The apples are done and we're gonna let those cool to room temperature. You could even put those in the refrigerator for a little bit to cool down because you don't want them hot when we're gonna be putting them on top of that cheesecake filling. So the next thing I'm gonna move on to is now our Biscoff pecan crust. And this is, again, no bake. We're not baking the crust and we're not baking that cheesecake filling. They're still gonna be so decadent, flavorful. There's gonna be some good texture in there. So to start with our crust, we're gonna take our Biscoff cookies and our pecans, and I'm gonna throw them into the food processor. We wanna make sure that those get to a fine sand crumb-like texture before we add some of our other ingredients here. Make sure nothing flies out the front, the back. There we go. Next, we're gonna add our melted butter and some sugar. And then we'll just mix these together real quick before we put it into our pan. Okay, this is great. It should look kind of like wet sand, right? We've got our crumbs in there. Let's just give it a good one little mix to make sure all the butter is incorporated. Perfect. All right, and then I have just taken my 8x8 pan. I sprayed it with nonstick spray, and we're just gonna put this right at the bottom and form a crust by pushing just really firmly to create an even layer of the Biscoff cookies and the pecans. Now, if you don't like pecans or you're allergic to pecans, you can use a different type of nut, or you could leave them out. I would just put some more cookies in if you're gonna leave out the nuts. So throw in a couple extra cookies, maybe 5 or so. So just start to even this out, just using the back of the spatula. You could also use the bottom of a measuring cup, works really well, or even your hand. All right, there she is. I'm gonna throw the crust just into the refrigerator while I'm making the filling, and then we're almost to the point we get to put it all together. I'll be right back. 3 things down, 1 more to go. This is now the no-bake cheesecake filling. We're gonna start by whipping some heavy whipping cream. This is just about a cup. And after we get stiff peaks here, we're gonna switch and we're gonna mix our cream cheese with some sugar and a little bit of lemon juice, and then we'll fold them together, and that's it. That's our no-bake cheesecake filling. Whipping cream, done. Let's just switch bowls real quick. And I'm just gonna mix up the cream cheese with a little bit of sugar. We need to sweeten it. There's our sugar, and then a little lemon juice, just to add kind of an extra layer and depth of flavor, a little tartness there. All right, and we're gonna get this nice and smooth, and like I said earlier, we're gonna fold the 2 together to create this just delicious, creamy cheesecake filling. We've got our cream cheese mixture. And our heavy cream. So let's just gently fold those together. And the whipped cream in here just really lightens the texture of that cheesecake filling we just created with the cream cheese. Just so it's not quite so dense, not quite so heavy. And we made this without even turning on the oven today. How much do you love that? All right, let's grab everything out. We've got the crust that we need to get out of the fridge, our apples, our caramel. Let's put it all together. We're gonna take our cheesecake filling and just put that right on top of our crust. Use it all. These are gonna be thick bars, but you're gonna love that with every bite. You get so much of this cheesecake filling. I'm just taking my offset icing spatula and I'm gonna evenly spread the filling over the crust. Now, this is a great dessert that you can make ahead of time. This can be in the fridge, and I think it's actually best to set in the fridge for at least a couple hours, but you could make this a day ahead of time and just cover it with some plastic wrap overnight in the fridge so everything sets really nicely. Okay, that looks great. Now let's grab the apples. Okay, remember these are cooled down to room temperature. You can even make these early ahead of time and refrigerate them. So we have some of that caramel of the sauce, but we want some more. So that's why we made the homemade salted caramel. So once we get this all in, let's just kind of spread that out. And you're gonna love when you cut into these. I mean, they're gonna be messy. That is kind of the beauty of these bars because we want that caramel sauce from the apples, but also this extra salted caramel that we're adding on to just really like drip down the sides of these bars. So you get that just added flavor. All right, so I just kind of even gently kind of put that into place. Now let's drizzle some of our caramel. And we are gonna be pretty generous with this. This caramel just adds so much. I wish you could smell it with me right now, but you've got to make it. And once you make it, you're going to realize why I am doing the caramel with what we had with the apples, because it's just so good and enhances and creates a flavor that is just so unreal. All right. Let's give these a minute to kind of just set. I'll put them in the fridge for just a little bit longer. Let's cut into them. Let's dig in. Let's get one of these cheesecake bars out. It's gonna be kind of messy. I didn't even give them all the time that they needed to sit in the fridge. But like, how can you wait? You know, this is gonna look kind of messy. So give it a little bit more time than what I'm doing right now. But I needed to at least show you, hold on. We're gonna really need another fork here because I am, look at this. Okay, hold on. We didn't even get like the best slice. I feel like that first one is always a little tricky. Look more in here since we didn't get totally set. But can you see those layers? Okay, look, let's just take a bite from here. You can see it's still kind of soft. That's why we want to leave it in the fridge for a little while. And even overnight is so great. Let's take a bite, shall we? Oh my gosh. Okay. The crunch, even though that crust is not baked in the oven, you still get a really yummy crunch. So you have the texture of the crust, and in that crust, with the nuttiness of those pecans, plus that just really rich, warm flavor of the Biscoff cookie, paired with our caramelized apples, there's so much going on, I can't even say it. Paired with the salted caramel and then this cheesecake filling, it's divine. This is the dessert of the fall that you got to make. You could also switch the apples for pears, for plums. Any fall flavor you wanted to pair with this, I think would totally work. So, I'm so happy right now. Hey, grab the recipe in the captions. I'm putting this back in the fridge so it's all ready to go for our Sunday dinner tomorrow. Can't wait for you guys to make this. I'll see you next time.